if you are still wide awake at 3 a.m., replaying a conversation from 3 days ago on a loop. If you're at a party, smiling, and suddenly get hit with a loneliness so deep, it feels like it is in your bones. If you're clearly smart, but constantly second-guessing yourself. If the things the world calls success feel hollow, and the ordinary routines of daily life leave you physically drained, that is not a problem with you. You're not too sensitive, you're not being dramatic, you're not overthinking it. Today, I want to share something. Cognitive psychology has kept out of the mainstream for a long time. High intelligence was never a cheat code for life. It is a gift that comes with a curse. Most people assume being smart means things come easy, smooth sailing, natural success. But decades of research from cognitive scientists, neuroscientists, and behavioral economists all point to the same conclusion, that the very traits that make you exceptional are the exact same ones that make you carry a kind of quiet, invisible pain. This isn't a pep talk. It is not bragging. It is not complaining. It is a scientific reality check written for everyone whose brain just won't slow down. Today we re-breaking down the 9 most private, least talked about, hardest to explain struggles of high intelligence people. By the end, you'll finally understand all the things you've called weird, antisocial, or being in your own head. There is a scientific reason for every single one. There is a group of people in this world who live in a kind of permanent dual experience. They can breeze through problems that stump everyone else. They spot logical gaps instantly. They pick up on patterns fast and think deeply about abstract ideas. But they're also more prone to insomnia, loneliness, perfectionism, decision paralysis, rage at injustice, and existential anxiety about what any of it even means. The world only sees the highlight reel. Elite schools, high salaries, impressive achievements, being called the smart one. But nobody ever asks, what does it actually feel like to be smart? Cognitive psychology figured this out a long time ago. Intelligence isn't a score or a label. It is a completely different way of experiencing the world. It comes with real advantages and its own specific kind of suffering. Today we're doing one thing, honestly, scientifically, and gently unpacking what is really going on inside the minds of high intelligence people. Whether you are one or you love one, this will help you finally understand. Struggle number 1, the curse of overthinking. The first and most universal struggle, a brain that never shuts off. Most people think overthinking is just a habit or an emotional issue. Cognitive neuroscience says otherwise. It is hardwired into the brain structure. Research shows that high intelligence people show significantly higher activity in the default mode network, the brain region responsible for self-reflection, mental simulation, replaying the past, and projecting into the future. In other words, a high IQ brain is biologically incapable of powering down. That is not a flaw. This same network is what allows deep analysis of complex problems, model building, and creative thinking. But the cost is real. Still mentally replaying a casual conversation at 2 a.m., obsessing over whether something you said came out wrong, automatically running through 10 possible future scenarios, brain running at full speed even when there is nothing to solve. A top Silicon Valley engineer with a tested IQ of 148 wrote on his personal blog, "I can write code in 30 minutes that would take someone else 3 days. But I'll spend 4 hours agonizing over whether a variable name is perfect and lie in bed replaying one critical comment from a meeting. My brain is a sports car with no brakes. It is always flooring it, and I'm just along for the ride." That is the first weight of high intelligence. The same ability that solves problems turns inward and becomes a tool for self-torment. From the outside, it looks like being neurotic or nitpicky. From the inside, it feels like a neurological reflex you can't control. Struggle number 2, never finding someone who really gets you. The second struggle is quieter, but just as brutal, a profound, bone-deep loneliness. A lot of people misread this. They think high-intelligence people are antisocial because they're arrogant, or look down on others, or just don't have social skills. That is completely wrong. Pioneering psychologist Letta Hollingworth, one of the founders of gifted education, research in America, identified this over a century ago. It is that their way of thinking operates on a frequency that everyday conversation simply can't carry. Regular small talk, weather, food, pop culture, gossip, work drama. What high-intelligence people naturally gravitate toward. The nature of consciousness, systemic patterns, human motivation, logical consistency. Abstract philosophy. How society actually works. The result? Small talk doesn't just bore them. It is genuinely uncomfortable, almost physically. They can smile politely, hold a conversation, make people feel good, but inside, it is like being behind one-way glass. They can see out, nobody can see in. An anonymous survey of members of Mensa UK found that 68% said they had never met anyone who could fully keep up with how they think, and 59% said they often feel misunderstood even in close relationships. One respondent said, "I've been married for 10 years. I love my partner deeply, but I have never once had a complete conversation about my thoughts on the universe, consciousness, or existence. Not because I don't want to, because no one can follow it." This isn't loneliness, it is cognitive isolation. Surrounded by people, completely alone inside. Struggle number 3, the paradox of high standards and self-doubt. The third struggle completely defies common sense. The smarter you are, the more you doubt yourself. Everyone assumes smart people are confident, certain, never lost. Reality is the exact opposite. High intelligence people are significantly more likely to experience imposter syndrome, and more severely. Why? Because they can see their own gaps with perfect clarity. The flaws in their thinking, the holes in their knowledge, the weak points in their logic, every place something could go wrong. Average people tend to focus on what they're good at. Smart people zero in on what they're missing. The higher the intelligence, the more clearly you understand just how much you don't know. That intellectual honesty becomes a confidence killer. Harvard psychology research found that the higher a student's GPA, the more intensely they engaged in self-criticism. An MIT quantum physics student put it this way: "I can solve incredibly complex equations, but every time I turn in an assignment, I'm convinced I failed. I can see errors that other people can't. So I always feel like I'm not good enough." That is the brutal paradox of high intelligence. The clearer you see the world, the more clearly you see your own smallness. The better you are at thinking, the easier it is to talk yourself out of your own worth. Struggle number 4, a boredom that goes bone deep. The fourth struggle, a profound neurological boredom completely numb to ordinary stimulation. This isn't just not feeling it. It is a deficit at the neural level. Neuroscience research has found that high-intelligence people have lower baseline sensitivity in their dopamine reward systems. Most people get genuine satisfaction from scrolling, eating good food, routine work, everyday entertainment. A high-intelligence brain needs high-intensity, high-complexity, high-novelty cognitive input just to feel activated. Without that stimulation, it is not just boredom, it is restlessness, emptiness, exhaustion, and real distress. That is why so many brilliant people hate traditional school, hate rigid workplaces, hate repetitive processes, hate lives that follow a predetermined script. Elon Musk has mentioned in multiple interviews, "School was painful for me from the beginning. The pace was too slow, too shallow. Sitting in a classroom felt like punishment. My brain needs extreme challenge. Without it, I fall into a kind of suffocating boredom." Education researchers have confirmed this. High-intelligence children are 3 times more likely to show attention difficulties in traditional classroom settings. Not because of hyperactivity, but because their brains are starving. Remember, they're not lazy. The environment just isn't built for their brain. Struggle number 5. Perfectionism. You can escape the fifth struggle. A standard of self-expectations so high, it becomes completely unworkable. This isn't pickiness, it is not OCD. It is the inevitable result of cognitive ability. A high-intelligence brain can construct a crystal-clear picture of the ideal version of anything. The perfect plan, the perfect phrasing, the perfect outcome, the perfect logic, but reality always has friction, limitations, imperfection. The gap between the vision and the reality is enormous, and it never closes. Psychologists call this the planning fallacy, combined with high self-efficacy. Your brain is good enough to imagine what truly excellent looks like. Reality can never fully deliver. So you're always disappointed, always self-critical, always unable to accept good enough. David Foster Wallace, one of America's most celebrated writers, with an exceptionally high IQ, wrote in his personal letters, "I can write a perfect paragraph in my head. On the page, it is never good enough. I can revise 100 times and still hate it. That gap causes me so much pain. I sometimes can't write at all." A lot of high achievers procrastinate, spiral, and can't bring themselves to start, not because they lack ability, but because they're terrified. Reality won't live up to what they imagined. Struggle number 6. Zero tolerance for hypocrisy and injustice. The sixth struggle, an absolute inability to look away from contradiction, double standards, and unfairness. One of the core strengths of high intelligence is pattern recognition. The logical gaps, the hypocrisy, the inconsistencies, the injustice that other people don't even notice. They see it immediately. Moral psychology research is clear. The stronger someone's reasoning ability, the more intense their emotional response to unfairness. Most people can ignore it, rationalize it, let it go. High intelligence people can't. Their brains are incapable of dismissing a logical break. Martin Luther King Jr. wasn't just a powerful speaker. He was a man of extraordinarily deep logical and moral reasoning. His inability to tolerate racial injustice wasn't only about moral conviction. It was because he could see, with perfect clarity, the logical contradictions embedded in the system and the distortion of human nature underneath it. When high intelligence people seem cynical or argumentative, it is not a bad temper. It is that they genuinely cannot pretend not to see what is wrong. That clarity is a gift. It is also an exhausting weight to carry. Struggle number 7. Decision paralysis. The seventh struggle and the most counterintuitive. The smarter you are, the harder it is to make a decision. The most common misconception: smart savvy overthinks everything. Just pick one. Behavioral economics has a term for this: analysis paralysis. A high intelligence brain instantly sees every variable, every consequence, every risk, every opportunity cost, every possible point of failure. The more options there are, the more angles there are, the more impossible it becomes to just go with something. Average people trust their gut and decide fast. Smart people run the projections and agonize. A venture capitalist in Silicon Valley with an IQ of 142 said on a podcast, "I can analyze an entire company's business model in 10 minutes, but I'll spend 2 hours deciding what to eat for lunch. My brain automatically calculates calories, cost, taste, health impact, long-term effects. I can't turn the analysis off." The brain that can solve the most complex problems gets completely stuck on the simplest choices. Struggle number 8. The relentless search for meaning. The eighth struggle, an existential hunger that never goes quiet. Austrian psychiatrist Viktor Frankl said, "The deepest human drive isn't pleasure or power. It is the search for meaning." For high intelligence people, that search isn't optional. It is compulsive. Conventional success, money, status, recognition, stability, comfort often feels hollow to them. They keep asking, "Why am I alive? Does this actually matter? What is the point of any of it? Am I wasting what I was given?" No amount of material satisfaction makes these questions stop. And they don't produce philosophical curiosity. They produce existential dread. A 10-year study tracking 120 high-intelligence adults, IQ above 140, found that 91% had experienced prolonged existential crisis. One participant said, "I have a house, a car, a family. Everyone thinks my life is complete, but every day I'm in pain. The work I do has no depth. My life has no meaning. I feel like I'm sleepwalking." Most people live inside their life. High intelligence people live inside the question of their life. Without meaning, they feel like they've lost their soul. Struggle number 9. The quiet loneliness of not being seen. The 9th struggle, and the most fundamental, a quiet invisible loneliness. Not no one to hang out with, but no one who actually understands. Psychologists who study intellectual giftedness consistently confirm inner isolation is the most universal and most persistent experience among high-intelligence adults. They can socialize normally, hold easy conversations, be funny, be likable, fit into a group. But there is always a part of them locked away in their own world. The deepest thoughts, the most painful questions, the most honest feelings. They can never fully say them out loud. And even if they tried, no one could really catch them. This isn't superiority. It is not aloofness. It is not being a loner. It is the inevitable distance that comes from thinking differently. A global Mensa survey found that 72% of high intelligence members said they had never been fully understood by their own family. And 65% said, even in their closest relationships, there is an inner world they've never been able to share. This kind of loneliness doesn't make noise. It just sits there quietly all the way down. Here is the most important takeaway I want to leave you with. High intelligence isn't an advantage or a defect. It is a distinct way of existing in the world. The cost and the gift come from the same place. Deep thinking, overthinking, seeing patterns clearly, sidey hypersensitivity to injustice, envisioning perfection, fundy chronic dissatisfaction, chasing meaning, funning existential emptiness, independent thinking being fundamentally misunderstood. The world celebrates intelligence, but nobody teaches intelligent people how to actually live with themselves. So many high-intelligence people spend their whole lives beating themselves up. Why can't I just relax like everyone else? Why can't I stop overthinking? Why can't I just fit in? Why am I never satisfied with myself? Here is what I want you to hear. You're not broken. You're just wired this way. Your pain isn't a disorder, a character flaw, or you being dramatic. It is the natural output of your brain. You don't need to become normal to be happy. What you need is to accept how your brain works. Understand your own struggles, and find a way of living that actually fits you. Overthinking, give your brain a designated off-switch time. Loneliness, find your few people, the ones on the same frequency. Self-doubt, accept that being smart doesn't mean knowing everything. Boredom, build real cognitive challenges into your life. Perfectionism, give yourself permission to be good enough. Hypersensitivity, turn your clarity into a source of strength. Decision paralysis, set a time limit and commit. Searching for meaning, use your thinking to create something that matters. Not being understood, accept that loneliness is just the shadow of your gift. The world needs ordinary people to keep things running, but it needs high-intelligence people to push thinking forward, to drive innovation, pursue truth, and move humanity ahead. Your pain is proof that you carry a mind that refuses to be ordinary. If something in this hit you, if you kept thinking, this is literally me, please like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. We don't do cheap inspiration here. We do science-backed, counterintuitive psychology that actually helps you understand yourself. Drop a comment and tell me, which of these 9 struggles hit closest to home? Overthinking, the loneliness? Perfectionism, the existential spiral? Share your story. This is the safest, most understanding corner of the internet. And if you know someone who is brilliant but lonely, send them this video. Let them know they're not alone in this. Next time, we keep going using science and real insight to reach every mind that is a little different from the rest. Subscribe. We'll see you there.